Do you think Bitcoin will be disruptive in that way? I mean, now it's a speculative currency. Will it be something that will be what normal consumers will use and will disrupt the banking industry?
My opinion of Bitcoin is that, I think Bitcoin is probably a good thing, but it's essentially, its main thing will be, I mean, this will probably get quoted here and there, but it's I think it's primarily going to be a means of doing illegal transactions. But that's not necessarily entirely bad, because some things maybe shouldn't be illegal. But
the combination of Silk Road and Bitcoin will save us?
Well, it will be useful for legal and illegal transactions. Otherwise, it would have no value as a use for a legal transaction, because you have to have a legal to illegal bridge.
Yeah.
I don't own any Bitcoin. Well,
So what does Buffett not like right now? That would be Bitcoin. He says that Bitcoin right now looks a little bit tulip-like to him.
It's not a currency. I mean, it does not meet the test of a currency. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not around in 10 or 20 years.
Why does it not meet the definition of a currency?
Well, because people say, well, I'll sell you goods in Bitcoins, but they change the price of those every time the price of the dollar changes in relation to the Bitcoin. They're pricing off the dollar. They could say, well, I'll sell it to you in barrels of oil, but if every time the price of oil changes, they change the number of barrels you have to have. That's not, your oil is not the currency.
So just taking a look at the returns we've seen in Bitcoin over the last couple of years versus the equity market that Dom just pointed out. James, I know one of the things you are saying here in your note that long-term investors should buy all of these dips as part of their portfolio and just never look at them again.
Yeah, Bitcoin is not a penny stock. It's not something you buy one day and sell the next day for little gains. You have to be a long-term believer that cryptocurrencies solve huge problems that paper currencies have. Cryptocurrencies will replace some or all of paper currencies in the long run. So people are always saying, oh, am I too late to get into this? No, this dip now gives the opportunity to see massive, enormous gains.
Are you investing in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies?
I've been buying on the way down, and I'll buy on the way up. So, what's going to happen is more regulation will happen, and that's a good thing, because then the masses will trust that the government's involved, they will possibly be protected, and institutions which have not yet been exposed to this really, maybe 0.25% of institutions have exposure to Bitcoin, they'll finally start getting in, and this will be a valid investment class.
Yeah. Regulations. This is part of the reason we're seeing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies shellacked in the last couple of days. Crackdowns in China, South Korea. How do you regulate the cryptocurrency market?
It's a fair question. South Korea has hinted that it might want to take on the exchanges themselves. Since at least one person in the South Korean government recanted that idea. I would agree with James that regulation in the end is a good thing for these markets. We saw it happen in Japan in 2017. That was a big boost to the market. Australia as well sort of acknowledged that this is a thing that we want to be a part of. But I think we do need to be careful that the government ain't gonna save you right now. Maybe 20 years from now, there'll be some sort of mechanism, but there's no safety net in this whatsoever. So if we want to think that this is a market that we understand, and there's a rubric of CNBC, and there's futures, and there's prices, it's all just sort of showmanship at this point.
James, I see an inherent contradiction, I think, in what you're saying. A couple months ago, you said Bitcoin can make it to $1 million per Bitcoin by 2020 easily. At the same time, you say regulation is good for Bitcoin because it's going to increase adoption. People will feel more comfortable with it. Well, if it's that volatile, that it's going to rise 100x in 2 years, Visa's not going to accept it. It's not going to be replacing traditional currencies anytime soon. We just heard from the Visa CEO exactly why that's not going to happen. At the same time, regulation is creating the major downward pressure on cryptocurrencies. How can both things be true?
I don't think regulation will create downward pressure if it allows the 300 million people in the U.S. who don't own Bitcoin to suddenly say, oh, this is viable for I need exposure to this asset class. So I think instead what you're going to see is everybody out there who says, are Bitcoins legal, illegal, what's going on? They're going to suddenly see, oh, okay, here's a regulated exchange where I can buy it. Suddenly you're going to see massive exposure to it, or massive amounts of people buying it, institutions, mutual funds, everybody.
All right, I'm going to put your mic on there for you. All right.
Nice,
I'm trying to help my co-guest here. But I would take some exception to what James is saying. If you wanted to sell your entire cryptocurrency portfolio today, how much of it could you get out?
You could get out probably 50 to 100 million a day. I mean, the volume goes up every day. I mean, there's more volume on Bitcoin than on most stocks on the New York Stock Exchange. Right. So I don't see, liquidity is not an issue. And Dominic was saying earlier, institutions might have problems. Institutions aren't yet in Bitcoin, but they will be. So every single institution will eventually get into Bitcoin. That's going to drive massive upward pressure into Bitcoins. There's going to be Bitcoin ETFs. There's going to be more Bitcoin futures. There's going to be derivatives on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. We are in inning 0 of this asset class. It's up from 1,000 to 10,000 in the past year. All the little speculators who thought they could flip it in the past month, okay, the air has come out of that. But this is still just the beginning.
Well, it's funny you say inning 0 because some argue we haven't yet decided what the rules of the game are going to be, right? Or where the baselines are. So why would you not wait until those are drawn?
Yeah,
at least out of some country.
You're right. Some people will. Like South Korea, like there's all these rumors South Korea is going to regulate, and yet we also don't even know what those regulations might be. So we might even be below inning 0, but we do need some guidelines on regulations, how the U.S. feels about it. No one's making it illegal, just like no one made the internet illegal. This is a global phenomenon.
Where are you on Ripple and Ethereum? When you say Bitcoin, are you using it generically, or you mean that specific trade?
I think Bitcoin and Ethereum and a few other cryptocurrencies are the main currencies out there right now. You see a couple $100 billion already invested in them. That's way beyond anything beyond the fad level. Like this is a real investment class that's smart.
But some of these other so-called joke cryptos, you would not touch.
98% of cryptocurrencies are scams or frauds. So you got to stick to the legitimate ones.
That's encouraging. Yeah.
No, but that's what's scary, and that's why regulations are needed. We need to help the 300 million people in the U.S. who'd like to get involved but don't know where to start.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.
Money from place to place. The cost of doing so, the overhead, as you put it, makes me think, believe it or not, of Bitcoin, because some people have said, hey, Bitcoin is the answer to those problems. Are you a believer?
Well, Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place. And, of course, for large transactions, currency can get pretty inconvenient. The customers we're talking about aren't trying to be anonymous. You know, they're willing to be known. So the Bitcoin technology is key, and you could add to it or you could build a similar technology where there's enough attribution that people feel comfortable. This has nothing to do with terrorism or any type of money laundering.
In fact, one can pay for a tour on Virgin Galactic up to the moon with Bitcoin. I think the Winklevoss twins have said that they would do exactly that. You think this is a currency that's really going to work eventually?
Well, I think it is working, and there will be other currencies like it that may be even better. But in the meantime, there's a big industry around Bitcoin. And you know, people have made fortunes out of Bitcoin. Some people have lost money out of Bitcoin.
It's volatile. It's volatile.
Yeah, but it is quite volatile. But you know, when in volatility, people can make money out of volatile situations.
Why was it important for you to give it sort of that stamp of approval, that endorsement, by saying to the Winklevoss twins, yes, you can pay for the ride with Bitcoin?
Because I'm not foolish. I mean, if people have got lots of Bitcoins and they want to go to space, I'd much rather they spent that money on our spaceship. Whether I keep it in Bitcoins is another matter. But I'd much rather they spent that money on a Virgin Galactic spaceship than on, you know, Elon will be sending people to space one day on Elon's spaceship. So we'll grab the money while it's there.
Are about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
Well, I can answer those very quickly. I think it's perfectly asinine to even pause to think about them. You know, it's one thing to think that gold has some marvelous store of value because man has no way of inventing more gold or getting it very easily. So it has the advantage of rarity. Believe me, man is capable of somehow creating more Bitcoin. They tell you they're not going to do it. They mean they're not going to do it unless they want to. That's what they mean when they say they're not going to do it. Yeah. If they hear their rules and they can't do it, don't believe them. When there's enough incentive, bad things will happen. It's bad people, crazy bubble, bad idea, luring people into the concept of easy wealth without much insider work. That's the last thing on earth you should think about. If it worked, it would be bad for you because try and do it again. It's totally insane.